So does everyone remember, like, about a couple years ago when everyone was absolutely losing their minds over clickbait and how it was going to ruin the platform, and then after like a month or two everyone went silent? And like, it's not like clickbait has even like gone away. Yeah, it looks a little bit different and it's not quite as bad as it used to be, but like, it didn't go away. I even use clickbait, so like, why does nobody care anymore? Let's talk about that. Do you like this octopus? I like this octopus. So there's kind of two sides of things as to why nobody really talks about why clickbait is an issue, / even thinks that it is an issue now. It has to do with the culture and what clickbait looks like. Now, talking about what it looks like is way easier, so let's start with that. Back when everyone was kicking up a fuss, the main reason was because it was giving a very bad image as to what YouTube was and what kind of things were tolerated on the platform. We saw a lot of oddly explicit things in thumbnails, usually some kind of strip gaming or things got sexual in this video, and even like really questionable stuff with siblings. But usually it was just like, oh, my girlfriend. So, you know, there was that. It was a mess. It was not a good look, and so people wanted to cut down on it. This form of clickbait is virtually non-existent anymore. Really, the only channels that do it are the prank channels that are somehow still around. I don't know how. And the polls. So yeah, really no one is doing it. And I mean, like, both of those thrive off of controversy. So unless you want controversy, you don't do the form of clickbait. The other form of clickbait that we saw was not delivering on a promise or a topic that was presented in the title or thumbnail. This was a lot more prevalent, and ironically wasn't talked about as much because it wasn't as clickable. It's not that enticing to hear about, like, oh, they didn't deliver on this video topic. Oh no, it's not as interesting. And this is still the kind that we see today for the most part. It has evolved slightly. People tend to deliver on the promises a lot more, but things like 600 IQ or 1000 IQ plays, it's kind of still playing into that whole thing of, look at this enticing, interesting thing, you've got to click on it, or putting clickable people in the thumbnails or titles. Right now, that tends to be Dream. People put Toast, 5UP in their imposter videos. I don't really know what the rest of YouTube is doing. But like, think how drama and commentary channels love to put big high topic people in their titles and thumbnails. I mean, look at my catalog. That is a form of clickbait. You're enticing people to click on it because of this thing that might not necessarily be the center of your content, even if it does somewhat reflect what's in it. And that is part of why clickbait isn't seen as an issue anymore. With this form of clickbait, it's still telling you something about the video, and if they're talking about something like 1000 IQ plays and you already enjoy watching Among Us content, you're still going to click on it. And even if it's not the biggest play of the century, you still probably enjoyed the video. You enjoyed the people in it, as largely they're in the same groups, and it wasn't a bad experience, so you don't see it as a problem. We've also now been conditioned to expecting this form of clickbait, or this style of formatting titles and thumbnails. Now we know what keywords to look for, and those are the keywords that then get put more and more into titles and thumbnails. Nowadays, when you're looking at content, you're more likely to click on something that is familiar, whether that be because you already know the person or because you know the topic. You're less likely to click on something you know nothing about. Why sink your time into something that might not be that entertaining or fulfilling when you could click on this thing that you already know you like? In business jargon, that means that the level of impressions it takes for someone to click on a video has gone up. You need more impressions for them to click on it. But that's business jargon, and I probably shouldn't touch on it too much more. But how did this happen? How are we suddenly okay with something that people were absolutely raging about only a few years ago? Well, there's a number of reasons. Back when everyone was kicking up a fuss, there was a different image of what a YouTuber was and different expectations for their content and them as a person. We were in the first wave of professional YouTubers. In the beginning, people were mostly reliant on companies, and very few were YouTubers with their own YouTube channel working independently. We were getting into the generation of YouTubers who became YouTubers knowing it could become a career, and some going in it explicitly to try and create a career. This really changed how things were taken. Before, people created content because they already enjoyed what they were doing, or in order to entertain. People trusted content creators. They were seen as just another person. People saw monetization as the worst thing possible. If you sold merch, you were a sellout and you could literally be cancelled for it. But in this new generation of YouTubers, the why has changed. Well, mostly, yes, people made it to entertain and because they enjoyed it. There's also that monetary value looming over it. The trust was lowered because they were no longer just a person, but also had a reason as to why they were doing this outside of just good intentions. And monetization was largely normalized. People sell merch all the time, sometimes at outrageous prices, and that's okay. No one says anything about it because that's now normal. The same thing with clickbait. Whereas before, it was seen as something that broke that trust. Now, it was just another normal thing that people did. People did it not only because of this change in culture, but also because of the YouTube algorithm. We now know that the algorithm is a thing which people didn't used to really know, and we now know to play into the algorithm, something that was unheard of only a couple years ago. Something that we know now is that click-through rate, or the amount of people who see your video and actually click on it, is extremely important and will boost your video in the algorithm. People didn't know that before. You engineered your thumbnails to be aesthetically pleasing, sure, but it didn't really matter beyond that. These videos that started utilizing clickbait would get higher in the algorithm as they were getting a higher click-through rate. And then you would see more videos that were using clickbait. And videos that wouldn't use clickbait wouldn't be boosted as much. You wouldn't see as much of them. And people who might not have wanted to use clickbait were forced to, as it could lead to lower views and maybe even lower monetization. So it was almost forced to become normalized, as to not do so, you were no longer competitive. And in order to grow, you needed to do this in order to be found and being brought up in the algorithm. Became a necessity. And whilst many people are kind of against the algorithm, it's definitely a necessity at this point. It's, with how much content there is, it has to be in some way curated to people, and the algorithm is the way that that is done. And I almost kind of like the algorithm, as controversial as that is. Especially when it relates to clickbait or clickable things. A lot of people use clickable now because it doesn't have the negative connotation. It's the same idea. It's putting something that people like to click on in there, and even if it's not the center of the video. You will hear many people, large people, talking about it, like Mr. Beast, Ludwig, Dream. They all regularly talk about their use of clickable or clickbait things. They even accredit it for how they grew. Dream with his PewDiePie videos and Unsolved series. Mr. Beast is the king of clickbait while also delivering on it, so is it really clickbait? And Ludwig talks about how between daily uploads and having clickable things, he was able to grow so quickly. That is the magic of and being able to engineer this part of your content. It allows even the smallest of people to be found, even just a little bit. And I mean, that's how I've been able to grow to the amount that I have, which, thank you guys, oh my god, is through having clickable keywords that people can find, and then they find my content. So I think it's almost good that the algorithm can do this. It evens out the playing field. It doesn't matter how many subscribers you have, you can control this aspect, and it can affect your growth. So, again, I like clickbait, and I like the YouTube algorithm. Am I about to be cancelled on Twitter? Whilst many old school YouTubers feel almost smudged by the YouTube algorithm, it completely changes the game. A lot of these things that initially worked for them now don't. and if they're unable to evolve, then they can lose their livelihood, and that's terrible. But also, it's led to many changes in the industry and many evolutions, and sometimes if you don't evolve, you get left behind, as sad as it is to say. So, that was my somewhat confusing, rambly video on clickbait. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!